There is a paradox so fundamental, so quietly devastating, that it torments countless men who believe they are playing the game of attraction perfectly, yet find themselves abandoned, forgotten, or fading like shadows in the periphery of a woman's interest. The secret is this: doing everything right, being reliable, kind, transparent, even successful, often leads nowhere when trying to truly captivate a woman's fascination. Why is that? How can the very traits celebrated by society and common sense fail so miserably at holding her attention? The answer lies hidden in the dark pulse of evolutionary biology, cloaked beneath layers of psychology and mystery. And it is a game few men understand, let alone master. To unravel this enigma, one must first confront the brutal reality of female attraction. It is driven less by logic or kindness alone, and more by an ancient, implicit signal tangled in the brain's chemistry, a signal tied to survival, reproduction, and the perpetuation of strong genes. This is not to diminish genuine connection or emotional intimacy. Rather, it is to reveal that beneath the warm veneer of love lies a cold, precise algorithm wired for instinctual filtering. Science confirms this. Studies on oxytocin and vasopressin show how bonding hormones facilitate closeness. Yet it is dopamine, the neurochemical of desire and reward, that ignites passion, intrigue, and relentless pursuit. Dopamine responds exquisitely to uncertainty and novelty. It is the chemical herald of the mysterious, the unknown, and the elusive. When a man reveals all too soon, when his narrative is laid bare without complexity, that dopamine spike dwindles. The brain senses no challenge, no unpredictability, no signal of genetic advantage. Herein lies the fundamental misstep most men make. They mistake transparency for trust, consistency for security, and availability for desirability. In truth, when every card is shown at once, when predictability becomes routine, female attraction dims like a slowly fading flame. The woman's subconscious reads this as a lack of challenge, a missing cue that this man is worthy of intrigue and pursuit. Evolutionary psychology teaches us that women have developed finely tuned filters to detect signals of genetic fitness beyond superficial kindness. Mystery, ambiguity, and selective revelation create tension in the female mind, sparking a psychological dance as old as humanity itself. Designed not merely to attract, but to secure investment from a worthy partner. The biological fact is stark. The female brain thrives on a paradoxical tension between craving intimacy and fearing loss. This fear is wired deep through millennia, where survival hinged on choosing partners who were not only reliable but inherently desirable, capable of introducing genetic variability and strength. When mystery is stripped away, so too is the urgency. Without that flutter of uncertainty, the will he or won't he, the unreadable glance, the enigmatic silence, her brain often settles into complacency, triggering the desire to seek stimulation elsewhere. This is why so many men who do everything right find themselves replaced by those who exude less predictability, those who maintain an aura dripping with shadow and question. But here's the twist. This is not about being deceptive or manipulative. Rather, it is about mastering a subtle art of self-possession and controlled revelation, a deep psychological advantage where mystery is not just a tactic, but a fundamental state of being. Imagine a signal so primal it bypasses superficial judgments and fires the dopamine circuits directly, a signal that declares, without words, here is a man who cannot be fully known, who carries depths worth exploring, and risks worth taking. This is the advantage few men recognize, yet it is woven into the fabric of attraction as surely as gravity pulls the earth around the sun. The silence between words, the pause before an answer, the hint rather than the whole story. These are not lapses or mistakes but intentional strokes in a complex portrait designed to enchant. Through this lens, the man who does everything right, but reveals everything right away inadvertently extinguishes the very mystery that fuels the woman's desire. In a society that demands openness and emotional availability, Embracing mystery can seem counterintuitive, even risky, yet that risk is precisely what awakens her fight or flight circuits. Her primal intrigue, and her drive to hold on to something elusive. Consider the hormone norepinephrine, unleashed during moments of uncertainty and suspense, accelerating the heartbeat, intensifying focus. It is the biological spark of danger but also of excitement. Without mystery, without that brief fear of loss or the sudden question mark about who a man truly is, that spark never ignites. The absence of this tension leads to stagnation, disinterest, and ultimately to emotional withdrawal. And because these processes are unconscious, many men fail to notice what went wrong until love has quietly slipped through their fingers. This secret signal, this biological truth, invites a profound rethinking of what it truly means to be attractive. It is not a checklist of behaviors but a dance of shadows and light. A delicate balance between presence and absence, disclosure and reserve. It is a silent language that speaks directly to the woman's evolutionary imperative to seek complexity, challenge, and promise of value beneath the surface. To understand this is to gain a crucial edge, a mastery not just of attraction, but of the deeper currents that pull human connection into fierce, magnetic life. Many men fear mystery. They fear it because it challenges control and certainty. Yet that very fear blinds them to an undeniable fact. Mystery is the thread that weaves desire, the invisible current that carries attraction. To unravel why mystery holds such power over a woman's mind is to step closer to understanding the primal code of connection, a code written long before words, before social conventions, before conscious intent. It is a code that demands respect and strategic patience rather than impulsive full disclosure. And so, here lies the profound emotional tension. Why will the man who reveals too much, too soon, lose not because he lacks value, but because he has surrendered the secret advantage he was born to wield? Why does a woman's gaze linger long after she seems to have decided, drawn instead to the shadows in a man's character that remain unilluminated and unknown? The answer speaks to a dance between power and vulnerability, dominance and restraint, light and darkness. A dance with roots deep in our biological past and echoes that shape every modern desire. The question that now hangs in the silent space between your heartbeats is this: if mastery of attraction depends not on perfect transparency but on wielding the art of mystery, what price are you willing to pay to keep her unknowingly intrigued, relentlessly captivated? At what point does revelation risk unraveling the very fabric of desire? And how does one cultivate a presence that both invites closeness and commands distance, both known and unknowable, both safe and dangerously compelling? This is the secret language of attraction few men understand, yet it underlies every glance, every pause, every unspoken word that pulls a woman deeper into fascination. It is a truth as old as time, as dangerous as fire, the secret advantage hidden in shadow, waiting for the gaze sharp enough to see it. The dance of mystery is not merely a tactical gambit. It is the primal whisper echoing from the depths of the female psyche. A whisper born from millennia of necessity and encoded into the architecture of her brain. The woman's mind, perpetually attuned to the intricate balance between safety and risk, craves this dance with almost cruel insistence. She hungers for the thrill of the uncharted, the intoxicating uncertainty that sets her neurons ablaze with desire, while her survival instinct simultaneously trembles on the edge of caution. The hidden dialogue playing out in her subconscious is far more than a game of surface attraction. It is the negotiation of legacy and lineage. A biological imperative compelling her to seek not just a partner, but a vessel carrying the deepest promise of vitality and genetic worth. Consider for a moment the paradox woven into this instinct. While emotional closeness activates the soothing balm of oxytocin, cementing bonds and fostering trust, it is the intermittent sparks of unpredictability that pour dopamine into her system, seducing her attention and staving off the ache of boredom. The hormonal interplay forms a covert tension, a magnetism born from oscillations between approach and withdrawal, exposure and concealment. This tension constructs the silent architecture of desire, a rhythm that pulses beneath conscious awareness and shapes her every glance, every hesitation, every flicker of fascination. To the woman's brain, certainty is a slow death of intrigue. It is the lock of predictability that condemns a connection to stagnate and decay. Behind this biological fact lies a greater truth about power, one seldom acknowledged in polite society but fundamental to romantic dynamics. Power is not the loud proclamation of dominance or the brute force of control, but the subtle mastery of presence coupled with strategic absence. It is the ability to withhold, to shield certain facets of oneself like precious relics, revealing in fragments that suggest whole worlds hidden just out of reach. This withholding is not born from deception, but from an ancient code of self-possession, a signal broadcast that says, "I am not yours to own easily. I am a force woven with layers, worthy of pursuit because I remain, in part, unknowable." The moment a man surrenders this advantage, spilling his entire self too soon, he exchanges magnetic mystery for predictable familiarity. He transforms from an enigma into an open book, a script fully read and no longer needing to be re-examined. The biological machinery powering female attraction thrives on this delicate equilibrium between clarity and shadow. Evolution has crafted women into connoisseurs of these subtle signals, trained through countless generations to detect the faintest modifications in behavior, timing, and presence, the seemingly minor details, how long he pauses before responding, what stories he chooses to tell and which remain silent, how he navigates the spaces between moments, compose a coded language more powerful than any overt charm or logical argument. Her brain reads these signals subconsciously, calculating risk and reward, potential for investment and promise of passion. The dance becomes one of rhythm and tension, where the man's very restraint broadcasts a primal broadcast of confidence and value that logic alone could never replicate. Yet, this is not a call to gamesmanship or emotional withholding divorced from authenticity.
No one seems
To
wanna
wield
listen
mystery
to me.
effectively demands a deeper truth and inner strength. Mystery is not the absence of honesty but the presence of depth.
Oh my God!
It is a reflection of a self so
there.
richly complex and internally sovereign that full disclosure is neither necessary nor beneficial. The man who embodies mystery speaks without speaking, reveals without exhausting, and draws closer not through submission, but through a compelling demand to be understood gradually, over time, by those willing to invest the journey. This psychological posture confers not only irresistibility but sustainability in attraction. It transforms fleeting desire into an enduring flame. What often plays out in real-world relationships is the tragic unraveling of this tension. Men, caught in the currents of vulnerability and societal expectation, rush to reassure and reveal, to eliminate any trace of uncertainty under the illusion that emotional availability equals desirability. Their transparency, though well-meaning, yields an unintended consequence.
Wow.
It diminishes the neurological spikes of dopamine and norepinephrine that kindle fascination. Without these chemical surges, emotional engagement dims. Colors fade to grayscale. The woman's instinct, finely tuned to signals of genetic vitality and psychological complexity, senses this loss as a depletion of the relationship's promise. As dopamine reservoirs drain, so too does her desire, and with it, the invisible bond tethering her focus and affection. This phenomenon is not confined to the initial stages of attraction. It permeates the entire arc of intimate relationships. What begins as a coiled tension threatens to unravel into complacency, where the predictable replaces the provocative, and safety eclipses seduction. The emotional paradox deepens here. She craves the security of connection yet subconsciously resists the dull certainty that extinguishes passion's flame. The man who fails to maintain mystery unwittingly triggers the same circuits designed to cause withdrawal in the face of stagnation. As the shadow recedes from his character, so does the woman's fascination, like moths drawn to a dimming light. And here lies the raw edge of the secret advantage. To hold the mystery is to hold power. To embody enigma is to wield an invisible current that pulls at primal desire. This power is not coercion or manipulation. It is a sacred command of presence that honors complexity over simplicity, tension over ease, and depth over superficiality. It is a whisper from the biological past carried forward into the modern moment. A decree that the truest connection requires not the destruction of distance but the maintenance of its tantalizing contours. In this light, the man who dares to cultivate the art of mystery is not just playing a game of attraction. He is engaging with the deepest layers of human nature, navigating the volatile interplay between instinct and emotion, safety and risk, known and unknown. He becomes a figure carved from shadow and light, an echo of ancestral codes that resonate beneath the veneer of contemporary desire. And in this space between revelation and concealment, between clarity and enigma, between presence and absence, there pulses the secret that few dare acknowledge but all feel, the secret that true attraction lives not in what is shown, but in what remains deliciously hidden. What then is the price of guarding this shadowed edge? How far must one resist the desperate urge to ease doubt and fill silence? And what catastrophe or triumph awaits in the spaces left unread, the depths left unexplored? These are the questions that linger, like smoke in the air, promising revelation yet shrouding their answers in the mystery that keeps desire alive. The truth weighs heavy in silence. It suffocates the eagerness to explain, to confess, to unravel the tangled threads of oneself at once. But what if the very urge to reveal is precisely what drives her away? What if, buried beneath that impulse, is a primal warning encoded in the folds of her brain, an instinct that recoils from the man whose depths are too readily plumbed? This instinct is not born from cruelty, nor from caprice, but from a biological necessity that predates language, culture, and even conscious thought. It is the whisper of ancient survival systems murmuring caution against settling for certainty too soon, for clarity too sharp, for presence too complete. For a woman, attraction is not a rational ledger to be balanced with kindness and consistency. It is a continuing pulse, a rhythm that beats irregularly with bursts of excitement and withdrawal, a dance of closeness that teases the edge of absence. Her subconscious craves this tension, this shimmering uncertainty, as much as it fears the dangers it hints at. The reward system in her brain rewards not merely good behavior but the thrill of the unpredictable, the glimpse of a shadow just beyond reach, the subtle flicker of emotional risk. Dopamine floods her neurons not simply because the man before her is safe and dependable, but because he is an enigma she cannot fully decode. An intricate puzzle promising secrets wrapped in layers still unexplored. This biological fact, cruel in its impartiality, explains why the man who offers himself fully at the outset sows the seeds of his own disinterest. Emotional transparency, the cultural ideal lauded by society, becomes a double-edged sword. It offers immediacy at the expense of intrigue. When everything is known, desire is replaced by familiarity. Mystery is supplanted by predictability. The woman's brain is wired to scan for signals of hidden complexity, signals that betray a fertile mind, a resilient spirit, or an untamed essence beneath the surface of polished civility. Without such signals, her innate drive to pursue obliterates itself quietly, with little fanfare but undeniable finality. Here, evolutionary pressures conspire with neurochemical mechanisms to construct an emotional paradox. She yearns for intimacy yet recoils from full disclosure. She seeks safety but is drawn irresistibly to danger who wears the guise of unpredictability. This tension, this fine line between closeness and distance, is the crucible of genuine attraction. It is not just that mystery fuels desire. It transforms the very desire itself into a living, breathing force, an invisible hand that pulls her deeper into a labyrinth where the man's worth becomes measured by his resistance to submission to scrutiny. The biological dance beneath this dynamic is exquisite in its complexity. Oxytocin weaves its gentle web of bonding, hinting at permanence and connection. Yet it is dopamine and norepinephrine that orchestrate the fevered peaks of longing. Those dizzying moments when a woman's breath catches, her heart quickens, and her attention sharpens as if threatened by both promise and peril. These neurochemicals respond not to stability alone but to the essence of risk, the risk of loss, the threat of withdrawal, the uncertainty of the man's internal world. When a man guards certain parts of himself with quiet strength, withholding some truths for the moment, he does not deceive. He signals something far more profound. He signals abundance, not scarcity, of inner life. Layered worlds beneath the surface still waiting to be discovered. This signal triggers an evolutionary impulse buried deep in her biology, a spark that whispers, "Here is a man worth investing effort in," because he harbors mysteries which might one day yield unforeseen rewards. Yet this balance is precarious. Too much distance, and the woman's fear surges. Fear of abandonment, fear of indifference, fear that the man's mystery is merely a veil for disinterest. Too much revelation, and desire dies, strangled by certainty, starved of challenge. This volatile interplay shapes the emotional battlefield of modern relationships where impulses clash with conscious intentions. It explains why, despite genuine affection, many connections falter when a man abandons the artistry of reticence to bare his soul too quickly. Or conversely, when he retreats into unreadable silence that signals emotional unavailability rather than elusive depth. The consequences ripple through real life as men mistakenly equate vulnerability with instantaneous disclosure, believing that immediacy fosters trust. But trust, like desire, is a slow-burning ember nurtured by patience, by controlled revelation, by the strategic dance of closeness and distance. To cultivate this trust, a man must embrace the emotional paradox that attraction itself demands, to be open enough to invite intimacy, yet reserved enough to remain irreplaceably intriguing. In doing so, he activates a hidden desire within the woman, a desire not just for companionship, but for a challenge, for a journey into the unknown territories of his psyche and soul. This is the advantage few men recognize but one that reshapes their relational destiny. They learn to wield silence as power, to let pauses between words become pregnant with unspoken meaning, to allow ambiguity to become the canvas upon which fascination paints its most vivid colors. They understand that the game is no longer about mere openness but about mastery over revelation, about when, how, and why to show parts of themselves that draw her in deeper rather than push her away. This mastery is not manipulation. It is an alignment with an evolutionary impulse that transcends time, culture, and superficial norms. It is a profound respect for the ancient code written not in words, but in neural circuits and hormonal surges that command attention, fuel desire, and bind two souls in the spiral of pursuit. And so, the man who learns this secret becomes a keeper of paradoxes, both enclave and enigma, both invitation and challenge, both comfort and risk. He understands that in the silent spaces between what is said and what remains unspoken lies the pulse of attraction, the hidden language that speaks only to those willing to listen closely and act with deliberate restraint. He navigates the shadows not in fear but with confidence, knowing that true desire is sparked not by full illumination, but by the lingering question, what more lies beneath? To master this dance is to accept that the heart's deepest hunger is not for certainty but for the thrill of discovery. It is to accept the price of mystery, holding parts of oneself back, not as armor, but as an invitation to be endlessly worth the pursuit. It is in this enigmatic space that desire is forged, enduring and fierce, as old and elemental as the stars themselves. The temptation to bare one's soul, to lay all cards on the table in search of fast acceptance, is as old as human longing itself. Yet this craving for immediacy, this desperate hunger to be fully seen and wholly understood, betrayed by the raw vulnerability it exposes, is precisely where many men lose the most dangerous game they ever play. The paradox deepens. The very act of unveiling is often the final nail in the coffin of desire, not because honesty is flawed, but because honesty, when wielded without the tempered grace of strategic reserve, extinguishes the thrill of pursuit. The silent promise of the unknown that keeps the mind racing and the heart yearning. Beneath the polished surface of modern intimacy, the female brain remains an ancient battleground where impulses once honed to ensure survival now manifest as intricate psychological choreography. Here, the emotional paradox reigns supreme. A woman's instinct may draw her toward warmth and safety, yet it simultaneously triggers a fierce, unrelenting need for challenge. This need is not a capricious whim but a biological fact, embedded in the complex interplay of neurotransmitters and hormones that govern desire. Dopamine, that chemical harbinger of anticipation, thrives on restraint, on mystery, on a tantalizing hint of risk. It will not surge in the face of plain truth fully delivered. Rather, it languishes, starved of the shadows in which it seeks to dance. Consider the female mind as a finely tuned instrument, seeking the signal of a man whose story is not yet fully known, one who embodies depth without disclosure, power shrouded in subtlety. Such a man does not surrender his narrative to immediate comprehension but deliberately withholds just enough to spark the fledgling fires of curiosity. This withholding is not mere evasion but a profound assertion of value. It says, "Here lies a complexity beyond your immediate grasp, a fragment of the primal unknown that demands exploration." Within that space between revelation and secrecy, attraction gains its silent momentum, pushing her unconscious toward a state of emotional tension where desire breeds and procreates. This tension is more than abstract theory, it is the engine of countless human dramas. The invisible thread that pulls a woman back again and again to the same man, even when reason suggests otherwise. In relationships, the absence of this tension is the cruel architect of disinterest and drift. When a man offers himself fully and too early, when transparency becomes predictability, the dopamine circuits quiet. The norepinephrine that once accelerated her heartbeat slows, and the entire cascade of neurological desire begins to wither. The hard biological fact is that desire is less about what is said and far more about what is left unsaid. Less about certainty and more about tantalizing ambiguity. Female attraction is, at its core, an evolutionary impulse governed by the oldest and most primal scripts. Long before words carried meaning, before social constructs polished desire, the human brain was programmed to seek signs of genetic strength hidden behind layers of uncertainty. Dominance, yes, but also restraint, the ability to summon strength yet harbor vulnerability, to command presence and cultivate distance simultaneously. This duality is a biological advantage, a secret code in the language of survival that transforms a man from merely known into irresistibly unknown. His unpredictability serves as a cipher, each enigmatic gesture a key to unlocking subconscious intrigue, triggering ancient instincts that modern awareness has yet to fully decode. The emotional consequences ripple far beyond initial attraction, cascading into the fabric of intimacy itself. When mystery is nurtured, emotional bonds deepen not in spite of uncertainty but because of it. The very fear of loss, the sense that connection might remain forever just out of reach, solidifies attachment in paradoxical ways. This is the biological paradox at the heart of modern relationships. Emotional security is inseparable from the leftover space for emotional risk. In other words, a woman's brain locks deeply only when the object of her desire is a man who simultaneously invites closeness and commands space, known enough to be trusted, unknown enough to be chased. This intricate dance is the silent territory where many men falter, either by fear of appearing distant or by mistaking availability for affection. The biological fact is that desire does not flourish in the soil of certainty but in the wild terrain of ambiguity. Being fully available, fully explainable, fully predictable is the emotional equivalent of a man announcing his own extinction. In that void, desire rescinds its claim, leaving behind the hollow residue of companionship devoid of passion. The harsh but necessary truth is that attraction, driven by biology, demands an ongoing promise of discovery, a relentless invitation to decode what lies beneath the surface. forever shading the man in the spectral colors of his mystery. And so, the man who strives to be known fully, quickly, and without reservation is unwittingly dismantling the very architecture of female fascination. His openness, when untethered from the discipline of mystery, becomes a signal of surrender, a cessation of the primal game of pursuit. The woman's ancient brain registers this not merely as emotional availability, but as a depleted source of dopamine-triggered excitement, a signal that the man's value, once potent, has dimmed. The advantage he once wielded is lost, evaporating into the gray haze of predictability and lost intrigue. The psychological landscape of attraction is thus a realm where knowing when to speak is as vital as what is spoken, where silence pulses with meaning and absence casts a shadow richer than the brightest illumination. To master this is to navigate the nuanced terrain of evolutionary impulse with an almost sacred respect for the unspoken. To hold the balance of allure and accessibility with quiet power, it is in this careful modulation of self, this artful withholding, that a man claims not just desire but influence, not just affection but fascination, cultivating a presence so deeply paradoxical that it simultaneously invites and resists fully being known. What cost lies in losing this edge? What diminishment befalls a man who chooses certainty over mystery, full disclosure over guarded allure, and clarity over shadow? The answer unfolds not in grand gestures or overt control but in the silent retreat of desire. The slow evaporation of that primeval fire that compels a woman's gaze to linger, to question, and to return. This secret game, hidden beneath the veneer of everyday interaction, demands a fine alchemy of restraint and revelation, a mastery that transcends mere behavior to become a fundamental state of being. For to hold back is not to deceive but to honor the evolutionary imperative that shapes every glance and every heartbeat in the sacred dance of attraction. In the end, the man who understands this invisible currency holds more than momentary interest. He claims the power to shape not just a fleeting encounter but the very architecture of desire itself. And so the quiet question persists, echoing in the still spaces between words. What mysteries of yourself are you willing to protect? And what secrets must you dare to keep in shadow, that she might never stop seeking, never cease wondering, never fully decide, leaving desire alive, suspended on the edge of knowing? There is a shadowed threshold, a point at which knowledge transforms into power, and where the silence between words becomes a conversation far more potent and primal than any declaration could hope to be. We have journeyed deep into the anatomy of attraction and uncovered the chilling truth that transparency can kill desire. That vulnerability wielded without discretion can become the assassin of fascination. But beneath this fact lies a deeper revelation, one that contorts the lines between connection and control, between emotional proximity and irresistible distance. For the man who understands this secret is no mere participant in the dance of attraction. He becomes the architect of emotional climate, painting desire with strokes of both presence and absence, of clarity and shadow. What if I told you that the very essence of female attraction is less a search for comfort or certainty, and profoundly more a quest to decode the puzzle hidden behind your eyes? The female subconscious seduces itself on the promise of discovery, the lure of complexity wrapped in enigma. This biological programming is no accident. It is etched into the marrow of our species, forged in millions of years when the survival of offspring depended on choosing mates who could evoke awe and respect, not simply affection. Her brain craves the chemical rush that comes from wrestling with questions that cannot be answered in daylight. A chemical storm summoned by unpredictable patterns, cryptic signals, and subtle restraint. This need for unpredictability, for a relentless trace of the unknown, triggers the dopamine pathways with a precision akin to a maestro conducting an orchestra. Dopamine, the elemental force of reward, reinvents itself through patterns of anticipation, uncertainty, and the promise of something just out of reach. It is the neurochemical signature of desire's hunger. When she knows everything about you too soon, the dopamine fades, the exhilaration dissipates, And what remains is the comfort of a man's predictability, the mortal enemy of passion. This is not to demean reliability or kindness, but rather to expose their limits. Without mystery, these traits recede into the mundane, benign and forgotten. But attraction, as ancient as life itself, demands a dual narrative, a paradox played out in invisible pulses, where dominance bows not to aggression, but to self-possession. Quiet confidence suffuses the room like a whispered secret, and withdrawal serves as the most potent form of advance. This is no theatrical game of manipulation, but an instinctual ballet where displaying too much too soon signals an absence of hidden depths, and therefore an absence of value. The biology of this is undeniable. The female brain, wired to seek a balance between safety and stimulation, interprets the too accessible man as an unscored note, a melody exhausted. When a man talks too much, reveals too fast, he becomes a map with no uncharted territories, predictable, navigable, and ultimately unworthy of pursuit. The interplay of oxytocin and vasopressin, neurochemicals that bond and endorse attachment once dopamine's chase has done its work, depends on this initial spark to catch flame. Without the chase, without the tension of what lies beneath the surface, the emotional intimacy that follows is hollow, a shadow cast by the absence of irrepressible desire. The paradox resounds deeply. Bonding hormones do not replace desire. They transform it into something enduring and real, but only when desire itself has been kindled first. Consider the biological fact that fear and desire are twinned at the base of attraction, a prelude to every love story written in the genome itself. Norepinephrine ignites that trembling heartbeat. The flush of adrenaline becomes indistinguishable from the thrill of uncertainty, and thus the mind becomes ensnared by stimuli that signal risk, promise, and the unknowable. To a woman's brain, the presence of mystery signals not only potential danger but also potential greatness. An evolutionary edge that whispers, "Here lies a challenge worth pursuing, a depth worth exploring." And yet, most men recoil from this dance, mistaking the natural pull of risk for the chaos of unpredictability. They seek to tame desire with logic or to secure love with availability, forgetting that the wildness of attraction thrives on the edge of control. This biological imperative, the craving for a man who oscillates between accessibility and elusiveness, fuels a psychological paradox. The very traits that promote closeness can undermine attraction when they are wielded without the counterbalance of mystery. It is the tension created by withheld information, by silence pregnant with meaning, that coerces the mind into engagement, sustaining fascination far longer than any overt declaration of intent. What a man reveals, what he reserves, and how he manages the cadence of his presence all comprise the subtle architecture of desire. A language older than words, more precise than any script. In every glance that lingers too long without explanation, in every silence that follows a question unanswered, lies a signal far stronger than confession. It is the testament of a man confident enough to withhold, secure enough to let possibility breathe, dangerous enough to remain unknowable. From this nexus arises a power not founded on domination, but on self-possession, the primal signal that a man's value exists beyond her immediate perception, that he is a puzzle designed to tease her instincts and reward her investment. This is the hidden desire that women crave, often without conscious awareness, the magnetic pull toward the ungraspable, the promise stitched into the dark fabric of the unknown. And so the emotional landscape becomes a terrain shaped by absence as much as presence, by echoes as much as words. Here, attraction is not a trophy won by revelation but a flame stoked by mystery, breathing fire from the tension of what remains concealed. The fearful impulse to disclose all, to eliminate doubt, ironically sows the seeds of detachment. In this realm, reticence is not withdrawal but command. Restraint is not coldness but invitation. With every word withheld, a man may paradoxically draw closer. With every layer left unshared, he plants the seed of fascination. If the delicate chemistry of desire depends upon the interplay of shadow and light, Then the ultimate mastery becomes an art of surrendering control while holding power. It is the recognition that not everything said needs to be known for connection to thrive. And that in truth, the unspoken often speaks louder than the spoken. The temptation to illuminate every corner of one's soul must be measured against the fatal risk of extinguishing the very flame that beckons her near. What then becomes of a man who dares to inhabit this twilight realm, not fully revealed, yet unmistakably present? He becomes a sentinel of desire, guarding the sacred paradox where intimacy and enigma intertwine. He embodies the biological paradox of attraction, both the safe harbor and the tempestuous sea. The question lingers: can a man learn to become this living contradiction, this mystery wrapped in sincerity, and in doing so, reclaim the forgotten advantage forged in the primal fires of evolution? The answer lies waiting in the silent spaces of interaction, in the soft pulse of hesitation, in the magnetic pull of what remains forever just beyond the edge of knowing.